everybody on board, and then we'll go from there. It'll just take a minute or two here. Let's see here. Let's make sure we're up and running. All right. Let's see here. It says I'm running on YouTube, so I should be up and going on there. And yeah, I see myself on there. That looks good. Facebook's going and YouTube's going. Hi, Kelly Anson. It's really good to see you. I have the ability tonight to lead the meditation time and the live stream and the comment at the same time. So, hi, Kelly. I can even comment as the church. I can comment as myself. It's just so much. I've got all these different abilities tonight. We worked out some of our tech kinks last week. So this week we should be able to respond to people more easily. Folks can watch us on YouTube tonight. And I've been told that the picture on YouTube is a lot better than the picture on Facebook. I also added a new microphone tonight, and I'm hoping that means that you can hear me a little bit better. I'm going to check. Yeah. Good deal. I can hear myself a lot better. That's pretty good. Hi, Cindy Kellerman. It's really good to see you too. How's everything with the Red Cross? Are you guys hanging in? Are you doing good? Jennifer Gilbert, really good to see you. Say hi to Anthony and Tyrone for me, please. I hope Tyrone's staying sane, working up at City Hall and doing all the stuff he's doing. Hi, Sandra Bowers. The highlight of our day. The highlight of our day was Chicken on a Wagon taking a tour of the Kansas City Zoo. We thoroughly loved the Chicken on a Wagon taking a tour of the Kansas City Zoo. We love all getting a view of the chicken in the wagon at the Kansas City Zoo. And if you have not yet, and you are part of our community, and you have not seen Sandra Bowers yet in one of the Kansas City Zoo videos, she is amazing. She is leading us through the zoo when we can't be there. We were watching today, and Lydia said to us, our 4-year-old said to us, "When can I go back to the zoo? When will Miss Sandra let me go back to the zoo?" And we said, Miss Sandra's not really in charge of that. But when we go back, we really hope we see the chicken on a wagon. We think that she needs to be a permanent fixture of everything. She was pretty awesome. That was a highlight. We're going to wait just a few more minutes to see who else joins in and participates. We've got a few viewers on YouTube as we get going here on this Wednesday night of Holy Week. I've got my John Prine shirt on, celebrating the life of John Prine today, who died yesterday as a result of complications from COVID-19. Got his music playing in the background. Suzanne and I got to see John Prine play in concert last September in Columbia, Missouri at the Roots and Blues Festival. And it was one of the best shows we've both ever seen. We really, really enjoyed the show. Cindy, I'm glad the Red Cross is good. You're giving every employee 2 free paid days off in April as a thank you. You deserve it. You really deserve it. We know that you've been working constantly. Tyrone's working at the downtown airport now. Okay, gotcha. I'm glad that he's there. The animals were so cool. I'm glad you watched the zoo piece too. We were all talking about it today at our house. We just loved the chicken on a wagon. It was just so much fun. Hi, Stites family. I began my day with one Stites. We call it the Daily Petri Dish with Dr. Steve and friends. We really enjoy Dr. Steve and friends in the morning. I know that the Stites family, the Reverend Stites family, calls their morning time with Dr. Stites the moment for sanity. And what is it? I can't remember. It's moment for... Oh, man. I know it's sanity or something. But we needed to be a little cheekier here. So we call it the Daily Petri Dish with Dr. Steve and friends. We like that name. It's kind of silly and kind of fun, but it's good. We're almost there. We'll maybe give it 1 or 2 more minutes to allow whoever else is coming in to be part of this, to come in and participate in our Wednesday night session. These Wednesday night light times have been a great time for us as a community because we haven't been able to gather on Wednesday nights as part of our Lenten practice. These Wednesday night lights have been a moment for us to try to come together and do a little bit of spiritual practice, to try on some different things together, and just to see what fits your faithful practice. What prayers work for you? How does it work for you to connect to the holy and the sacred in a meaningful way, in a practice that you can fit into your everyday life? And we've tried a bunch of those practices so far. It's been interesting to see which practices have stuck with which people and who resonates with what. Some people have really resonated with one practice and not with another. Some find every practice is something that really works for them and they really, really like it. So far, all of our practices have been practices that you can do from home really easily. These practices that you can do from home really easily kind of range the gamut between quiet or more interactive. Before our safe at home times began, we had introduced coloring as a practice of prayer, praying in color. We had introduced contemplative prayer. We had introduced centering prayer. And then since then, we revisited our centering prayer because we knew that a lot of folks might need that now more than ever as we all confront some anxiety that we did or did not know that we had. And we also, last week, looked at this practice that we call the practice of the presence of God, which is this practice that goes back to the 17th century, and it comes from this monk whose name is Brother Lawrence, who encourages us that when we're washing dishes, or when we're setting the table, or when we're cooking dinner, trying around the house to do different chores and important things for our families and for one another and for ourselves, that every practice can be a moment that we call our awareness to God with us. So how did that go? You can comment or you can put up anything that you want on Facebook. You can like this post or whatever it is and share. How did that go last week for you? Was it easy for you to wash the dishes and to say, God is in this? Or was it just too overwhelming that you are on day 16 or 20 or 25 of staying at home for the most part? Was it really hard to call your attention to the practice of the presence of God? Were you able to cook dinners for the people that you loved? I know that on our Friday happy hour call for the church, I made cinnamon rolls from scratch while we were talking, and that for me was an active practice of the presence of God as we gathered on Friday night. I was really aware that the presence of God was with me as I rolled out the dough and scattered the sugar and the butter and made sure that those rolls were made with love and grace for my girls and for our family. It was a simple practice, but that went pretty well for me. How did it go for you in the last week? It might not be for you. You might have had too many things going on. I totally understand if that's the case. But this week, we're going to try a little bit of a different practice than anything we've done so far. This week, we're going to try a Jesuit practice. Now, it's Holy Week. And I don't know about you, but Holy Week feels strange to me. Obviously, we can't get together. And as I shared with several others this week, and as several others have shared with me, being a pastor in Holy Week is a week that's really full most of the time. It's a week when it's really hard to catch up with yourself. It's a week when the practices of faith, the services that we have, fulfill our spirits in ways that we couldn't imagine, and everything in the life of the church tends to build up and build up and build up to Holy Week until we get to Easter, and then it's just this huge celebration. So this week, I'm missing that. I mean, our week here's pretty good. We played in the backyard today in the beauty of the sunshine. We filled up a little kid pool with water, and the girls ran through it and played and splashed, even though it was a little chilly for them. We had fun with sidewalk chalk out front. It was a different kind of celebration for Holy Week here. A good one, but a different one. So tonight we're going to try a Jesuit practice because I don't know about you, but I really want to imagine myself back into this Easter week. I want to use my imagination to think about this Easter week as a celebration, even in the moments that are so difficult as we all wrestle with this global pandemic moment together. So Jesuit practice, what we're going to try tonight is something that we call imaginative contemplation. Imaginative contemplation. Now, it's different than contemplative and centering prayer. Imaginative contemplation causes us to do a little bit more work. it causes us, as we say to our little girls all the time, to put on our imagining hat and to place ourselves into a story. The roots of our practice for tonight, this Jesuit practice, this Ignatian practice, they come to us from a man whose name is Ignatius of Loyola. Ignatius of Loyola was born in 1491 in the Basque region of Spain. He was the youngest of 13 children. And when I learned Loyola, I learned about him from a person who said very quickly that he was regarded as deeply handsome and charismatic. Deeply handsome and charismatic. So really, when you think of Ignatius of Loyola, deeply handsome and charismatic, just think about me, right? Just deeply handsome and charismatic. So as you think about Ignatius of Loyola, deeply handsome and charismatic, he, in his adolescence, dreamed of being a great fighter. He was known as having all these dreams and these hopes in his life of being a great leader. He wanted to be famous. So he entered into military service and he was injured in battle. And he was taken back to his father's castle where he was treated by doctors. But this was in the 1500s. And so when he was treated, the doctors, in order to treat an injury to his leg, would break it and re-break it as a matter of setting and resetting. And as a result of the treatment that he received, he would have one leg that was shorter than the other, and he would walk with a limp for the entirety of his life after his injury. During his treatment, Ignatius of Loyola took up all of this religious material because the religious orders of the day were the ones who took care of him. But during his treatment, he experienced a series of dreams and visions. And these were visions of God and of the saints. And he underwent a conversion to faith, and he experienced a call to give himself to God, just like Francis of Assisi had before him. And part of this came from an exercise of faith even then that he would later come to name as our practice for tonight, imaginative contemplation. So following his recovery, Ignatius of Loyola, he went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and he began to develop ideas around a series of religious practices that he could do that would help him to grow closer in faith and in discernment of the Holy Spirit. He called them the Ignatian exercises, the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And these exercises, all of them, follow a very rigid, straightforward, almost military-like pattern of practice. The spiritual practices are founded in two fundamental exercises. Two very simple exercises. Remembering and imagining. Remembering and imagining. You know, remembering is something that we have done in some of our spiritual practice as community together before. In our Wednesday night Vesper services at community, we have practiced remembering by doing what we call an examen, E-X-A-M-E-N. In the examen, we ask ourselves to remember and to go back in contemplation how our days were, what happened in them, who we encountered, where we saw God, where we felt distant from God. That is remembering. But equally important in our faith is this act of imagination. We don't tend to engage it as much as we do with remembering. So tonight we're going to practice imaginative contemplation. Some know this as simple contemplation, the practice of simple contemplation, but it's centered around a fundamental question. What happens when we imagine ourselves in the stories of our faith, in as sensorial way as possible? What happens when we use our senses and we imagine ourselves in the stories that we're reading? So the key to doing this exercise is to choose a story, choose any story that's usually the Gospels work best for this. So stick with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for now. Choose one story, small story, don't go too huge, and experience that story in as deeply a sensory way as possible. as you think about the story, think about yourself in it and ask yourself questions about your senses. And when I say senses, I mean your 5 senses. If you were to be living inside of this story, what am I seeing in this story? What am I hearing in this story? As Reverend Suzanne does, what am I hearing in this story? What am I tasting in this story? What am I smelling in this story? And what am I touching in this story? If you feel like you can answer those questions fairly well, then expand them out to some other questions. What am I thinking as this happens? What am I doing as all of this is happening? What am I feeling as all of this is happening? So remember, choose a story, small, not too big. Don't go too far, too fast. And then ask yourself sense questions. What am I seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching? Or what am I thinking? What am I doing? What am I feeling? In spiritual exercise with the, find yourself looking for places that are called places of consolation and places of desolation. In consolation, we find places where God's Spirit comes to our spirit and gives us comfort and compassion and presence and companionship and release and forgiveness. In these places, we receive the gifts of God's heart, of love and of joy and of hope and of new life. And in desolate places, we find places of challenge, kind of like what we're in right now as a global community. In these moments, we find holy grief, sacred consternation. We emerge from our meditation times when we encounter desolate places with new questions, new purposes, new directions, and new ideas of what we might explore. And those places might be where our spirit is being called beyond ourselves, beyond our comfort zone. So enter the story, use your senses, and then ask yourself, where am I finding desolation? I'm going to post some of this in the comments here in just a minute. But tonight, we're going to try one of these imaginative or simple contemplations. So if you've caught any of our morning devotionals through this Holy Week, you know that Reverend Shanna and our section leaders have been doing a great job. We're posting daily devotionals through Holy Week. They come out first thing in the morning, although tomorrow on Monday, Thursday, the devotional will come out later in the day to time with a little bit closer to the in-day meal on Monday, Thursday. And then on Friday, there will be another devotional later. I think it's going to be at noon on Friday, on Good Friday. And then there'll be a devotional on Saturday, and then on Easter Sunday there will be more. We invite you to tune in to worship that morning. But for this morning, on Wednesday, the story came to us from Mark's 14th chapter, verses 32 through 52. So you don't need a Bible. I've got a Bible right here. And I'm going to lead us in a little bit of a guided, imaginative contemplation. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to put both of your feet flat on the floor. I know. And then take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Take another deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Find a place where you can be comfortable. Put both feet flat on the floor. Wrestle around and get yourself nestled into your seat. Roll your shoulders out if you need to. That's where all my stress ends up getting kept. Set your body in an open way. Put your palms up if you need to, or you can put them onto your knees. And take a deep breath in through your nose. And out through your mouth. As you take another deep breath in through your nose, begin to Smell what is around you. Take a moment to take a deep breath in, experiencing the smells that are around you. Now remember, we're trying to use our imagination to place ourselves inside of a story tonight. So as you take a deep breath in, imagine that you are breathing in the deep, fresh smells of an early evening dew falling on green leaves. Imagine yourself smelling the lush vegetation of a garden, surrounded by plants. Hear the rustle of the leaves underneath the feet of those who have traveled with you this day. Take a deep breath in. Smell the dustiness of your traveling companions around you. Feel their warmth next to you and the rustle of the own rough cloth of your own tunic against your skin. As you and your companions file into the garden together, as you stumble in after a long day, you all are weary. Your shoulders ache. Your breathing is labored after much walking and carrying and traveling. And you find yourself in a garden, a rest and renewal, soft, wet grass beneath your feet, stones set up in different places for people to sit on. You find yourself together, finally at a place where you feel that you can rest. And you look up a little bit towards the one who has been leading you all day. And he turns around to you and he says, "Take a rest. Take a load off. Sit down and rest." But it looks like your time is not quite done. He looks to you. He points at you, and with his finger he motions for you to come along, and so you gather up yourself. Even as you begin to sit on the ground, you gather yourself up, you stand back up, you pick up the things that you carried with you until he motions, lay them down, and you follow him a little bit further. As you look towards the one who has led you all day, you can't help but notice that he is a little bit more tentative than usual. He seems anxious, nervous. He's looking around into the trees around him, and so you too begin to look into the trees around you, wondering who is around you, who is waiting, who is watching, who is there. You sense on the one you follow the unsureness. He turns to you and he says, "It's been a hard day. I'm overwhelmed. The sadness is all around me. There is a deep grief upon me, but I need to keep going. But I want you to just stay here for a little bit and keep alert. Just stay here and wait for me to come back." Eager to rest after a long day's travel, you lay down and you sit and you try to watch as he journeys a little bit farther into the garden's coolness. And you sit and you keep watch until he's out of sight. And as you keep watching, and as you wait, and as you continue to feel the anxiousness, the overwhelmingness, the unknowingness of that moment, suddenly it all begins to seep into your body, and your shoulders fall, and you feel the weight of the day, the weight of the journey falling on you until you can barely keep your eyes open, and so you slowly but surely drift off to sleep. You lay your head down. What are you smelling in the freshness of that garden? What are you feeling in the coolness of the ground upon your cheek after a hard day's journey? What are you experiencing in this moment of rest? I know he said to stay awake, and yet I am so tired. Suddenly, he comes to you. Are you asleep? You feel a hand on your shoulder waking you up and jostling you. Are you asleep? You jump with a start, ready to wake up and open your eyes. Are you asleep? Couldn't you stay alert for 1 hour, he says. I just have been gone for 1 hour. Couldn't you stay awake with me for 1 hour? You begin to stutter and stumble for your words, and yet you still feel the grogginess that comes when you've been woken up in the middle of a deep sleep, a final rest after so much weariness and anxiety. Couldn't you stay alert and awake? You stumble for your words, and he looks at you and he says, stay awake. Stay awake. The spirit is eager, but the flesh is weak, you hear him say. He looks at you and he says, I'm going to go again for a little bit, but I'll be right back. Stay awake. The spirit is eager, but the flesh is weak. You watch until he's out of sight. You feel the coolness of the evening as the sun continues to set. The cool breeze on your skin feels so comforting again, and again still the weight is on your shoulder, the weariness of the travel of the day, the journey through anxiety and unknowing, and carrying your leader through this whole thing. And you drift off to sleep again. And again, he comes back to you. Are you asleep? And you wake up with a start. You open your eyes and you have no idea what to say to him. A second time inside of yourself, you wonder, how could I have done that again? And yet at the same time, the weariness is in your shoulders. You feel your jaw clenched from all of the anxiousness. He embraces you and he says, I'm going to go again. Stay awake. And you watch again as he goes away, and again sleep falls on you and you rest. And then he's there again and he says, will you sleep all night? This is enough. You hear him as he comes to you. You open your eyes open wide. The third time, you must be awake. You have to be present to this moment when he comes to you and he wakes you up. And so together you open your eyes. And he says, the time has come. The human one will be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. You gradually take your hands and you place them on the cool ground around you. You push up and you feel that feeling that comes in your mouth right after you wake up. You begin to cough and clear your throat as you wake up a little bit and rise to your feet to follow him once again. And he says, get up. Let's go. Slowly but surely, in this exercise of imaginative contemplation, ask yourself, as I found myself in the place of a disciple following Jesus, into the Garden of Gethsemane, what was I feeling? As I found myself as a disciple following Jesus into the Garden of Gethsemane, what was I feeling? What was I thinking? As I found myself in the garden with Jesus, what was I thinking as I couldn't stay awake even though he was asking me to? And as you fell asleep, even you may have asked, what am I doing? A question many of us ask in these days, where we anxiously and eagerly await and wonder. Slowly but surely, when you are ready, find yourself back in your body and open your eyes. Maybe you need to shake off the tiredness of the disciples out of your shoulders. Maybe that's the case. Practice for tonight. Imaginative contemplation. I know, it's different, right? Instead of remembering anything or trying to empty ourselves out, we try to imagine ourselves in a story. Where in the story, in our imaginative contemplation tonight, where did you find moments of consolation? Moments where the Spirit of God came to you and gave you healing. I know that there may be a few people watching tonight who need some rest. Perhaps you have been working yourself to the bone. Maybe you are one of our heroes, one of our docs, our RNs, our folks who live and work in hospitals. Maybe you're at grocery stores or serving food. Or maybe you are constantly on the go trying to provide for your family at home, being safe and making the safe decision for other people, working to do that communal effort of flattening the curve. Maybe that's you. And maybe what you need is rest. Maybe that's your consolation tonight. That even the disciples needed rest before they could fully live into Holy Week. Maybe your consolation is in knowing that no one's perfect. That even as Jesus goes into his last days, right, the disciples have this moment where they're not quite sure and they fall asleep. No one is perfect. No one is enough. Maybe that's your consolation tonight. Consolation moments are where the Spirit of God comes to your spirit and lives into you, gives you rest or healing or forgiveness or hope or life or love or whatever. Where was moments of consolation for you? Put them on the Facebook comments if you want to. If that's helpful to you, to share it with other people, to know that you're not alone. Where were the moments perhaps of desolation for you tonight? Is it possible, as you heard our imaginative contemplation, that you might have heard inside of it a question, a wondering, that as Jesus comes to this week in which he dies, as he heads toward, how are others in our world today heading to moments where they travel alongside death, either personally or with others? And you might be asleep to it. How are you called to respond in whatever way you can? What was a moment of desolation for you that may have challenged you and encouraged you to be something more during this safe at home time? Perhaps it's making face masks for one another. I know we're working on that as a church some. But perhaps it's finding more compassion for yourself and others. Working harder to love each other instead of judge each other. Even Jesus, when he comes to the disciples, expresses disappointment in them, but he doesn't say, you're horrible. He doesn't judge them or say, you're worthless. None of that. Instead, he comes and he says, why couldn't you stay awake? Maybe that's a moment for us to say, I need to be more awake. So, imaginative contemplation, our practice for tonight. Now, you don't have to lead a guided meditation like what I did tonight. You can take a story and just say, what am I thinking What am I seeing? What am I tasting? What am I smelling? Take the feeding of the 5,000 as an example. As you watch Jesus make 5 loaves and 2 fish into enough food to feed 5,000 men plus women and children, what are you seeing? What are you smelling as you're by that sea? What are you touching as the bread and the fish are passed around to you? And can you smell that fish on your hands? How does that put you in the story in a different way as you imagine your way into Scripture? Try it. Try it this week sometime. Just take one story, commit yourself to one story. Take that feeding of the 5,000 if you'd like. Taking the Holy Week stories into imaginative contemplation can be a little difficult. They're a little harsh. So choose one, like the feeding of the 5,000, and read it out of Scripture, and then ask, what am I seeing? What am I touching? What am I tasting? What am I smelling? What am I hearing? Put yourself into it and try it. So that's our practice for tonight. My prayer for you in these coming days of Holy Week, Maundy Thursday is tomorrow, Good Friday, and Easter, is that you will find ways to take joy in the midst of lament. That you will find ways to say, this is the day that the Lord has made, even in the midst of the challenge of our days. My prayer and my blessing for you tonight are that you go in consolation and in desolation. That you find ways to let God's Spirit bring you consolation, and you find ways in these days of global desolation to challenge yourself out into a space where you might be the presence of the living God to yourself, to others, and to the world. Amen. So I feel bound a little bit to make sure I do one thing before I go, and that's to remind you that there will be daily devotionals happening throughout the week. Somebody's texting me as I'm doing this. We'll have daily devotionals that will continue until Easter Sunday. They're video devotionals that'll be on our Facebook page. Tomorrow, we have story time at 10 a.m. Reverend Suzanne will lead story time at 10 a.m. with our kiddos, so tune into that. That's a Zoom call, and it'll be on Facebook Live, so tune into story time with Reverend Suze. On Friday, we have happy hour at 5 o'clock, and that's a Zoom call. Last week, our happy hour crew hung out for an hour and a half. We just had our Zoom call on, and we had a great time. There is a rumor on the streets this week that Gary Tannen will be on the happy hour again, and this week he may bring his guitar and lead sing-alongs as part of that. I think we're all going to request John Prine songs the whole time, so join us for happy hour on Friday night at 5. It'll be a really, really great time. So 5 o'clock on Friday for happy hour. I know it's Good Friday, but we're still going to have happy hour. On Saturday, we have Saturday Sits with Reverend Shanna. That's at 8 a.m. on Saturdays. They're just a 10-minute long contemplative sit. Anyone can join in. It's a Zoom call that's at 8 a.m. You can find all of the links to all of these Zoom meetings. You can find them all on our website, all at communityforkc.org. And then on Sunday, on Easter Sunday, we have a sunrise devotional, I believe, that's going to go out at the crack of dawn. So for all of those people that are missing their Easter sunrise service, we'll have a devotional that comes out at Easter sunrise. I think the pastors are going to take this moment to actually sleep in a little bit on Easter, which is kind of nice. And then on Easter, we'll have our 10:30 live stream service, which actually will start at 10 a.m. So Easter Sunday will start at 10 a.m. with musical prelude, and then at 10:30 service will start, and that'll be on YouTube and on Facebook. So join in as part of that. It'll be a great way for us to connect and to celebrate Easter together, even though we're apart. And then next week, we go back to our usual online schedule of Tuesday, Thursday story times, and Wednesday night lights, and Monday music meditations, and all that fun stuff. So join us. I hope to see you at happy hour on Friday, and I hope to see our littles at story time tomorrow. Lots of love, light, and hope to every single one of you in this holiest of weeks. Find your way into the story together. Grace and peace.